Hello and welcome. Tonight, 70,000 naira is new minimum wage for Nigerian workers as the National Assembly speedily passes the National Minimum Wage Act 2019 into law. The Central Bank of Nigeria raises the monetary policy rate by 50 basis points from 26.25% to 26.75%. We'll be joined by the CEO of financial derivatives company, Mr. Bismarck Rawani, to examine the implications. And President Bola Tinubu appeals to those planning a protest in the country to shelve their plans as he is working hard to address their concerns.
On business news, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria says dormant accounts are susceptible to fraud, promises safekeeping of accounts.
On sports, 100 meters hurdles world record holder Tobi Amusan will be Nigeria's flag bearer for Friday's opening ceremony at the Paris Olympic Games.
From the nation's capital, the Nigerian Army launches a 5-day operations planning cadre for middle career officers of the 4 Special Forces Command DOMA and personnel of the Nigeria Police and paramilitary agencies, including the Department of State Services in Nasarawa State.
And in international news from London, Vice President Kamala Harris has secured the support of a majority of Democratic delegates to become the party's nominee for president.
We start off from the National Assembly and, of course, in the lower legislative chamber, where the House of Representatives is asking the federal government to suspend the chief executive of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, Mr. Farouk Ahmed, pending the conclusive investigations into the allegations against the authority. Now, this follows a motion on the urgent need to address the outrage resulting from the comments of Mr. Ahmed. Lawmakers are concerned that the allegations have been made that the agency was given licenses to some traders who regularly import high sulfur content diesel into Nigeria, and the use of such products pose grave risks or health risks and huge financial losses for the people. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives is asking the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission and the distribution companies to reverse the tariff hike for Band A customers immediately. Our correspondent Terry Kumi reports.
During Tuesday's plenary session in the Green Chamber, the House amended its rules to accommodate more than the allowed number of matters of urgent importance per day. The attention of the House is immediately drawn to the concerns in the midstream and downstream sector as a lawmaker raises alarm over what he describes as the unguarded utterances of the chief executive of the Petroleum Regulatory Authority.
The House is also concerned that the unguarded statement by the chief executive of this agency, which has since been disapproved, sparks an outrage from Nigerians who tagged his on Demley and local refineries as insistence on the continued importation of fuel, an act of economic sabotage, as the imported products have been shown to contain high levels of dangerous compounds. Mr. Speaker, the House resolves to call the federal government to suspend the chief executive of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Authority pending conclusive investigations into the allegations against the authority.
The motion is amended and adopted.
The motion be referred to the ad hoc committee set up by this House
Honorable Kusaria
to investigate the allegations against the MD.
Meanwhile, the House is calling for urgent containment of the oil spillage in southern Niger.
urgently address this very serious situation could lead to unrest in an area already bedeviled by poverty and lack that rely heavily on farming and fishing. The volume of the damage recorded since April 2024 till date, if not quickly arrested, could cause further damage to the waters and their contents, leading to a near annihilation of aquatic lives, which is the only source of livelihood of most southern Niger coastal communities.
Another urgent matter before the House calls on the Nursing and Midwifery Council of Nigeria to commence verification of nurses and midwives.
This House resolves to urge the Nursing and Midwifery Council of Nigeria to open its
order, please,
and commence verification of nurses and midwives based on its former guidelines, not the revised guidelines for verification dated February 7, 2023, pending the conclusion of investigation by the House Committee on Health Institutions.
In the meantime, the House considers a report from its Committee on Power and adopts the suspension of the hike in electricity tariff. The House then receives a defection notice from one of the two members of the African Democratic Congress from Kogi State, Honorable Salman Idris, to the All Progressives Congress. Plenary is then adjourned till September as the House commences its annual recess. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
In the meantime, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, is concerned as it's now asking for caution from major actors, government agencies and regulators in the oil and gas sector of the economy over the recent debunked allegations of poor quality of diesel leveled against one of the largest private investments in Africa by the NMDPRA, the Dangote refinery. According to the Director General of the association, Segun Ajayi Kadir, it is expected that agencies of government that provide regulatory oversight functions should promote an enabling business environment for local investments to thrive, adding that no regulatory agency should be seen to be casting a shadow over a homegrown investment like the Dangote refinery. Mr. Ajayi Kadir adds that the allegations of poor quality, monopolistic tendencies and non-issuance of license have since been roundly debunked, and there may then be the need to issue a clarification that absolves the Dangote refinery of the negative perception generated by the news report. The association says the Dangote refinery is deserving of government protection and support, and that the Dangote refinery, located in Lagos in Nigeria Southwest, the largest single-train refinery in the world, will play a significant role in reducing Nigeria's dependence on imported petroleum products, reduce cost and energy poverty, and significantly boost the nation's energy sufficiency. President Bola Tinubu has appealed to those planning a protest in the country to shelve their plans as he is working hard to address their concerns. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mr. Mohammed Idris, who disclosed this to State House correspondents after a meeting with the President, said President Tinubu is listening to the people and the federal government is working to ensure interventions go directly to the intended recipients.
Mr. President has asked me to, again, inform Nigerians that he listens to them, especially the young people that are trying to protest. Mr. President is listening to them. He takes what they say seriously and is working assiduously to ensure that this country is good, not just for today, but also for the future. The issue of the planned protest, Mr. President does not see any need for that. He's asked them to shelve that plan. He's asked them to await government's response to all their pleas. He has listened to them, like I said, and a lot is happening. Only today, the National Assembly has expeditiously passed the new national minimum wage. You can see how the president is working. It was transmitted only yesterday. Today it has been passed. A lot of other interventions that the president has also put in place are also going to be looked at expeditiously in the interest of Nigeria. So there's no need for strike. The young people out there should listen to the president and allow the president more time to see to the realization of all the goodies he has for them. For example, you saw that the federal government approved grains for and rice for state governments. It was delivered to them expeditiously also. The federal government is not, like I said that the other time, that it is not the necessary first step. Government is going to continue in that direction, supporting them and ensuring that whatever intervention that the federal government has put in place go to those that should benefit. It is very important that that is being put out. Federal government is looking at strategies to ensure that every intervention goes directly to those who benefit from those interventions, not middlemen.
Meanwhile, the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Kayode Egbetokun, is warning organizers of the protest that the police will not condone any form of violent demonstrations capable of creating chaos in the country. Addressing strategic police managers at the conference in Abuja, Mr. Egbetukun says the police will not sit idly and allow a repeat of the 2020 NSAS protest, which led to the loss of innocent lives and properties. He advised organizers of the protest to shelve the idea, as the federal government is aware of their sufferings and is working towards alleviating the situation.
It is important I address an issue of urgent national importance which appears to have gained some momentum, particularly on the social media in the past few weeks. Some groups of people, self-appointed crusaders and influencers, have been strategizing and mobilizing potential protesters to unleash terror in the land under the guise of replicating the recent Kenya protest, the Beku. While the force acknowledges the right to peaceful protest as enshrined in our Constitution, we must ensure that these protests do not snowball into violence or disorder. As a nation, we have had more than our fair share of violent protests, which with rather dastardly consequences. The last NSAS protest led to wanton destruction of public assets, including police stations, courts, transport infrastructure, and loss of several lives. Tales of sorrow, tears, and blood followed what was supposedly intended to be a well-intentioned exercise. Rather than to lead to any positive outcome, NSAS merely aggravated crime rates and insecurity in several parts of the country. Indeed, we are yet to fully recover from the huge economic losses and deep-seated psychological and emotional trauma inflicted upon our people by this protest.
It is now official throughout the country. The National Assembly has passed the 2019 National Minimum Wage Act Amendment Bill into law. The passage was effected following a correspondence transmitted by President Bola Tinubu requesting expedited consideration of a bill for an act to amend the National Minimum Wage Act 2019 to increase the national minimum wage from 30,000 naira to 70,000 naira and reduce the time for periodic review of the national minimum wage from 5 years to 3 years. In a unanimous vote and without much debate, the National Minimum Wage Bill speedily scaled the 3 legislative processes and was passed. Our National Assembly correspondent, Gloria Umezoke, reports.
Lawmakers resume for the first plenary of the week with a loaded agenda, top of which is a correspondence from the President Bola Tinubu seeking expedited consideration and passage of the National Minimum Wage Bill, which is read for the first time on the floor.
I forward herewith the Minimum Wage Bill 2024.
Without further ado, the lawmakers unanimously voted in favor as the bill speedily scales both second and third reading.
A bill for an act to amend the National Minimum Wage Act 2019 and to increase the national minimum wage and reduce the time for periodic review of the national minimum wage from 5 years to 3 years and for related matters 2024. Third reading.
Similarly, the executive bill enjoyed the backing of lawmakers in the House of Representatives.
We did our calculations. We got the data from the Accountant General Office before we apply this figure. So we know the money is enough from now to December 31st to take care of that 70,000. So, I mean, it's enough.
Moments later, the leader of the Senate announces the defection of one senator from Labour Party to the APC.
The strangers are coming in to witness the cross-carpeting of one of our distinguished colleagues.
The upper chamber subsequently suspends its rules to admit Governor Hope Uzodinma of Imo State, who is present to witness the defection of Senator Onyewuchi Ezenwa, representing Imo East Senatorial District.
This decision is due to the intractable division and crisis in the Labour Party.
The latest defection is described as a victory for the administration.
It is coming to our party in Imo State. We have the 3 senators of APC now in Imo State, and that is also added impetus to the political evangelization we are doing in the southeast region of the country.
Back in the chamber, a bill for an act to amend the Nigeria Police Act 2020, seeking to enable a person appointed to office to remain in office until the end of a stipulated term.
When we simply give them the opportunity to serve as far as the tenure in the letter indicates, I think that will be abused because somebody will feel it will not be removed, regardless.
This bill is only seeking to guarantee the tenure of office of the Inspector General of Police.
The executive bill transmitted by President Bola Tinubu is subsequently passed.
Third reading taken and passed.
The Senate has approved an amendment of 6.2 trillion naira to the 2024 appropriation bill, raising the budget from 28.7 trillion to 35.05 trillion naira. The Senate also approved the Finance Act Amendment Bill 2023 to impose 70% windfall levy on banks. The Senate has therefore adjourned till September 17, 2024. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, the Central Bank of Nigeria raises the monetary policy rate by 50 basis points from 26.25% to 26.75%. We'll be joined by the CEO of financial derivatives company, Mr. Bismarck Rouhani, to examine the implications. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live from Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. 70,000 naira is new minimum wage for Nigerian workers as the National Assembly speedily passes the National Minimum Wage Act 2019 into law. Central Bank of Nigeria, the CBN, raises the monetary policy rate by 50 basis points from 26.25% to 26.75%. And of course, we'll be joined by the CEO of financial derivatives company, Mr. Bismarck Rouhani, to examine the implications. And President Bola Tinubu appeals to those planning a nationwide protest in the country to shelve their plans, as he's already working hard to address their concerns. Former Vice President and presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, Atiku Abubakar, is insisting that the rights of citizens to protest are enshrined in the Nigerian Constitution and affirmed by the courts. Speaking through his verified X handle, the former vice president points out that Section 40 of the 1999 Constitution, as altered, unequivocally guarantees the right to peaceful assembly and association. Part of Mr. Atiku's statement reads, quote, "Chasing shadows and contriving purported persons behind the planned protests is an exercise in futility when it is obvious that Nigerians, including supporters of Tinubu and the ruling APC, are caught up in the hunger, anger and hopelessness brought about the incompetence and cluelessness of this government," end quote. According to the former vice president, it is deeply ironic that those who now seek to stifle these rights were themselves leading protests back in the year 2012. He adds that a responsible government must ensure a safe and secure environment for citizens to exercise their constitutionally guaranteed rights to peaceful protest. Meanwhile, human rights lawyer Mr. Femi Falana has weighed in on the planned nationwide protest scheduled for August the 1st this year. According to Mr. Falana, it is the right of Nigerians to protest as enshrined in the nation's constitution. He also explains that he won't join the protest because the organizers are not yet known. He spoke on our political program, Politics Today.
Police Establishment Act of 2020, Section 83, subsection 4, that during protest, the police shall provide adequate security for the protesters. That is the law. So what should be done, or what is expected, if there's going to be a protest and there's an announcement, is to ask the protesters, where do you want to gather, so that the police can surround the place and ensure that hoodlums, so-called, or thugs, normally employed by politicians, deployed by politicians during election, will not take advantage of genuine protests in the country. And I think that is what the government should do now. Try and identify the organizer and collaborate with them to ensure that violence will not occur. How do you identify those who are issuing statements, those who are planning the protest, and then engage with them productively? And then the questions being raised, there are demands that are being made. The government should address this demand. And between now and the 1st of August, it's still a long way.
It's another hike of the monetary policy rate at the end of the 296th meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria. While the increase is modest at 50 basis points compared to previous hikes, the impact of a further squeeze on the real sector is recognized by the Central Bank Governor, Mr. Olayemi Cardozo. Mr. Cardozo promises that as a regulator, the CBN will be more attentive to the implementation of policies needed to achieve the desired result in the economy.
For the 13th time, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria has displayed its hawkish stance, but this time by a moderate 50 basis point hike on the monetary policy rate. This makes the MPR 26.75% from 26.25%. Cash reserve ratio retained at 45% for deposit money banks and 14% for merchant banks. The meeting also retained liquidity ratio at 30%, while the asymmetric corridor has been adjusted to plus 500, minus 100.
This is hinged on monetary policy gaining further traction.
With food remaining a major factor of Nigeria's increasing inflation, the meeting has spoken on the need to watch the drivers.
In its consideration, the committee noted the persistence of food inflation, which continues to undermine price stability. It was observed that while monetary policy has been moderating aggregate demand, rising food and energy costs continue to exert upward pressure on price development.
The CBN governor also emphasizes the need for collaboration between the monetary and fiscal authority, even as he applauds the recent move to ease food prices through removal of import duties. However, this has been perceived as a short-term measure.
I think we need to think about the real issue. What do we need to do to be able to boost food production in Nigeria? That is what we need. We have so many research institutes in Nigeria talking about yield. I can't even see what they've done or what they've delivered in the past years that we've had them. We've talked about infrastructure, transportation. Now, even if you produce the food, how are you going to take the food down to where the food is needed? We talked about storage. We've talked about how much losses we're incurring, right? And so we need to focus on infrastructure really and truly.
As the meeting watches out for the impact of the 50 basis point increase, they note with pleasure some positive macroeconomic indices, which includes increase in diaspora remittances, which is at $2.34 billion, as well as in capital importation, which stood at $5.92 billion as of June 2024. The CBN governor, Mr. Cardozo, says this is encouraging and a motivation for the regulator to remain intentional in not just policy pronouncement, but also implementation.
All right, for more on the CBN Monetary Policy Committee meeting, I'm now being joined on the News at 10 by Mr. Bismarck Rawani, the CEO of Financial Derivatives Company, to examine the likely implications on the latest hike in the interest rates by 50 basis points to 26.75% from 26.25%. Mr. Rawani, it's great to have you with us again on the News at 10.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so this is the latest development. This is where we're at, Mr. Rawani. Yes. But it would appear we're still battling with the issue of rising inflation. What's the difference this time from what we've seen from the CBN MPC meeting?
I think there's a wrong emphasis. The emphasis is on the 50 basis point increase in interest rates, while the real deal is the asymmetric corridor adjustment. What this means is that banks have been borrowing from the central bank to buy foreign exchange from the central bank. And before now, they were borrowing at about 26%. As from today, they'll be borrowing at almost 32%. That difference of almost 5 to 6% means that the cost of borrowing from the central bank to buy foreign exchange from the central bank has gone up astronomically, and that means a big pool a deterrent to borrowing from the central bank to buy foreign exchange, and that should actually reduce the pressure on the exchange rate.
So what are we looking at really? I mean, what's because based on what the CBN governor said, you know, it's all meant to make things much easier.
In the last 3 years, 12 times they've hiked the rate, 5 times they've been status quo, but only 4 times have they adjusted the asymmetric corridor. This has a bigger squeeze effect on liquidity than the 50 basis points increase there. So this was a very subtle and nuanced way of saying banks stop robbing Peter to pay Paul. Because basically, you go to the central bank, use the money there, use it to buy foreign exchange, and now sell it to the customers, you know, basically a form of carry trade. So what is the impact of this? You see, between July 2021 and 2024, interest rates have increased by 15.25%, and inflation has increased by only 16.81%. So there is some impact there between the relationship between interest rates and inflation. When you add this other adjustment, we should see a better effect. And quite frankly, the whole idea of inflation, if you look at it properly, inflation has started moderating. The inflation measures the rate of increase in prices, not the nominal price. And we will get to that point where we are going to have to discuss what this actually means and what are the stoking factors. But the immediate reaction today was that the Naira fell sharply. The Naira fell to 1687. That is 1,687 to a dollar. It had peaked at 1,915 months ago, but now, and then it stabilized at about 1,500, but this afternoon, it went to 1,687. Why? Because people are not sure of what it means or whether there's enough reserves to support the currency. So, but there's a knee-jerk reaction, and then there's also medium-term reaction. But this means a lot because what is happening is that the exchange rate is feeding back into domestic prices. And one of the reasons why this is happening is that a lot of people are going to buy dollars to take advantage of the waiver on duty and for the import window. So there's an artificial seasonal demand for dollars, which has pushed this up. It's only when when those goods come back into Nigeria or arrive in Nigeria, when the prices begin to go down, you begin to see the impact. And we're going to discuss that in a minute. So, initial reaction, no need to panic, but the Naira lost basically about 200 Naira. Now, this is what I was talking about. Banks robbing Peter to pay Paul. They were borrowing at plus 100 minus 300. Now it's plus 500 and 100. The difference is quite significant, right? So, what next? This also may actually increase the foreign portfolio inflows because that had actually come down. It's expected, even though it's 50 basis points only, the foreign portfolio flows, what we call hot money, has been able to support the Naira so far. But so recently we've seen some of those monies go out of the country. So there's pressure on the Naira in the foreign exchange market. So this hike in interest rates is expected to boost FPIs in August. That's next month. That's when we're going to see the effect. Now, this is the inflation spiral. It was increasing sharply. It started stagnating now, and it's expected to start falling. And when I say falling, not significantly, from 34.19 to about 32%. And then towards the end of the year, maybe to about 28%. That's what you're going to be seeing. But how does this impact things? One of the major stoking factors for inflation in this country is logistics costs. Thank God, Dangote to the rescue. You know, all the argument about monopoly and all of that. The truth is that it was 1,700 per liter. It's now down to 1,180. And this drives public transportation, movement of goods and all of that. So it's a good thing that Alhaji Dangote has come to the rescue. The other thing we talked about is no strike, no drama. Now it's a law, 70K is the minimum wage. So that helps. Now, what does all of this mean to your pocket, to the ordinary man?
To the ordinary man.
Well, we have this import program, and which is it a savior or a poison chalice? Today, if you go back a minute, today, the price of these commodities, what we are seeing is that the price of these commodities are going to drop or expected to drop if nobody corners it. That is, rice, for example, current price is 82,000. The expected new price should be 70,000 in September. Wheat flour, 59,000, should come down to 50,000. And beans, which is now 150,000, should come down to 110,000. And maize, which is used for pap and animal feed, will go down for 105. Now, let's look at it. Today, between last quarter and this quarter, a bag of rice has gone from 80,000 to 82,000, up by 2.4%. Beans is a major culprit. It has gone from 95,000 to 150,000, 36% up. Palm oil is up by 9% from 5,500 to 6,000. Now, eggs, 4,000 naira to 5,500, depending on the size of the egg, it's up 27%. Noodles are up by only 4%. And look at this yam. This harvest season is just starting. New yams are out. It's gone from 10,500 to 18,000 naira.
That's massive.
That is significant. But what's going to happen after the imported food comes in? We are going to see those prices begin to come down. Hopefully, if it's not cornered. So if that happens and the prices begin to come down next month or in September, you will see the difference, right? And why there's a lag between when policies are announced and when policies begin to take their effect. So this is what is going to happen after the duty waiver. A bag of rice should come down from 82,000 to 70K by September. Beans should come down from 150 to 110. Maize should come down from 105 to 95. And flour should go to 50,000. Hopefully, if things are not cornered. But the full effect of this if you are in different categories, you are the elite, you are the survivors, and all of that. On the elite, international school fees, no matter what happens, will go higher. So you have to look for substitute schools. Air travel will stay flat because IATA changed their rates yesterday to 1,690 to $1. And medical tourism, you heard Femi Falana talking about people staying in Nigeria to treat themselves. Medical tourism costs will also increase. So finally, as we go here, so transport fares, right, will go up from Lagos, Obalende to Victoria Island, which is now 300 naira, will go to 400 naira, and your house rent is going to go up by about 20%. So next year, as we go to the end of the year, this is final. What next? Food import duty waiver will taper inflation. Dangote PMS will come in on August 15th. It will guarantee supply but not price. New minimum wage will impact inflation only marginally. Higher interest rates will increase savings and help moderate inflation pressure. The Naira will recover from 1,700 to 1,500 in September. That's what it is.
That is what it is, indeed.
It is what it is. But you know what? Truth is in short supply in Nigeria. So this is the truth. Thank you.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Mr. Bismarck Ruwani, for your thoughts and, of course, analysis on the news at 10. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Still to come on the news at 10. Welcome back to the news at 10. After 10 years, a Chibok girl, a 27-year-old E. Abdul, has finally been rescued. And in a startling revelation, she says she was married to 8 men while in Boko Haram captivity. Now, E. Abdul, who is currently pregnant, was rescued with her children along with 330 other women and children by troops of Operation Hiding Kai in their latest operation in the area. But the rescue of E. Abdul brings the total number of rescued Chibok girls to 19.
These are the latest rescued victims of the Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria's northeast region. They were mostly rescued from the Sambisa forest by troops of the Northeast Operation Hiding Kai. Most of them were rescued from the Bama and Bulka axis of the forest within the past 2 weeks.
The influx of the number we are seeing coming out on a weekly basis through Tikwa and of course Bama is an indication that the logistics strangulation strategy in the conduct of this operation under the guidance of the theater commander, Major General Waid Shaibu, successful.
Among those rescued is one of the Chibok schoolgirls abducted in 2014, Mrs. Ihi Abdul, with her children.
On 23rd June 2024, Ihi Abdul, along with her 2 children, were rescued by troops of 21 Special Armored Brigade during an offensive operations conducted within Sambisa Forest. While in captivity, she was forcefully married to one Abu Darda at Goza Town in 2014. However, Abu Darda, who is an indigene of Plateau State, later relocated to Senegal, and she later got married to other terrorists that were eventually neutralized by own troops within Sambisa Forest. At the moment, she is 3 months pregnant.
Mrs. Abdul, who is number 67 on the list, is now 27 years old. She narrates her experience while in captivity.
I escaped from a community outside Nigeria. I trekked for days before getting to a military checkpoint in Nigeria, where they took my children and I in. I married 8 men, so I did not want to escape earlier until now. The Chibok girls were not kept in the same camp. While some of us that have remained in Sambisa Forest have chosen to escape, some have not had the opportunity. As for education, I cannot see anything for now, but I'm not sure I can continue with my education.
The theater command handed over the rescued families to the Borno State government for further management and reintegration into the society.
So let's head to the nation's capital now, and Terry Kumi is standing by to give us the very latest from our Abuja studios. Over to you, Terry.
Well, thank you very much, Ayo. Now, the Nigerian Army has launched a 5-day operations planning cadre for middle career officers of the 4 Special Forces Command, DOMA, and personnel of Nigeria Police and paramilitary agencies, including the Department for State Services in Nasarawa State. The commander of the 4 Special Forces Command, DOMA, Major General Hilary Nzan, stated that the cadre is to build capacity and competence to enhance result-based performance in joint operations. He restated the Nigerian Army's commitment in implementing initiatives aimed at combating insecurity in the country.
It's an annual event. Annually, the Department of Army Training organizes training for young officers on operations planning. And, we are faced with myriad of security challenges in the country. And the training planning cadre is meant for young officers that are in the field. And formations organize it. That is exactly what we are doing in 4SF Command. And by so doing, we do invite sister security agencies, the paramilitary agencies, whom we are operating together in the field, to partake. Of course, it will sharpen the field officers on operations planning tenets in order that we will be able to subdue the insurgency, the myriad of insecurity issues that bedeviled the country.
Now to politics. The candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the 2024 Edo governorship election, Asuwe Ighodalo, says he is a man to be trusted with a mandate to move Edo State forward. Mr. Ighodalo, who addressed a town hall on his agenda for the people, said many politicians in their reckless behaviors have betrayed the trust of the people in the past.
The Rokwota Hall in the heart of the Edo State capital, Benin City, is the venue for this town hall. The event presents the opportunity for the public to have a face-to-face with the PDP candidates in the 2024 governorship election on their campaign manifestos. The PDP candidate, Asuwe Ighodalo, says his manifesto will be his bond with the people. He believes that many politicians have let the people down in the past.
Don't
be say people don't help us. Don't be say we don't see money from people, but people don't they tire for our yo. They don't tire. They give us more money like this, we go chop am. The money we don't need to chop, they go chop am. Money where people they use for people's life, they go chop am. Every day scandal, every day wahala. I know you these men. I don't understand now. And I chop the money finish. I don't even wear better clothes. I don't chop better food.
His running mate, Asarajan Oge, joins in the conversation. He makes a case for PDP continuity in power. The audience seeks clarification on the campaign promises.
How do you tackle the invasion of our forests by these herders when they displace our farmers?
Our husband on the small money where they receive is not the rich. How we go do and where women don't go suffer for a dog?
The response from the flag bearers is a commitment to serve if given the opportunity.
We will make you healthy. We will make you wealthy. And it shall be for the future development of Africa. So help us God.
This town hall is one of the numerous engagements lined up to engage the people to make the choice of the PDP at the September 21st governorship election in Edo State.
Well, that's all from the nation's capital. Business News is next with Wile Bong.
Thank you, Terry, and welcome to Business News. And the governor of the central bank, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, has warned that dormant accounts are more susceptible to fraud. Mr. Cardoso made this known at the Monetary Policy Committee's meeting today in Abuja. It explains that a significant part of the policy is to safeguard the funds of bank customers. On July the 19th, the CBN directed banks to transfer unclaimed balances and funds from dormant accounts to the central bank for safekeeping. Mr. Cardoso emphasizes that this measure ensures security for the funds at no cost to the beneficiaries. Now, in a post on X by billionaire businessman Femi Otedola, the one-time Minister of Agriculture and AFDB President Dr. Adesina Akinwumi expresses his views on the ongoing controversy surrounding the Dangote refinery. According to the post on X, Dr. Adesina, who was speaking in his personal capacity, says, quote, monopoly often exists where there are high barriers to entry or high capital costs. To manufacture is extremely expensive and risky. This is even more so in Nigeria, given a very challenging business and economic environment fraught with policy uncertainties and policy reversals, and where the self-defeating default mode of simply import it is always so easily rationalized and coerced to solve any problem. This whole disparaging of Dangote is uncalled for, it is self-defeating, and it is very bad for Nigeria. Who want to come in and invest in a country that disparages and undermines its own largest investor? End quote. Meanwhile, the president of Gabon, Brice Ngema, is asking President and Chief Executive of Dangote Industries Limited, Aliko Dangote, to explore investment opportunities in Gabon. During a meeting between Mr. Dangote and the Gabonese president in Libreville yesterday, President Ngema emphasized potential investments in cement and fertilizer production, specifically urea and phosphate. President Ngema says he looks forward to the potential partnership, highlighting Gabon's commitment to creating a conducive environment for foreign investments. He adds that the collaboration with Dangote Industries will bring significant mutual benefits, including job creation, technology transfer, and enhanced industrial capacity. Dangote Cement PLC, Africa's top cement producer, operates across 10 countries with an annual production capacity of 52.0 million tons and revenue exceeding $3.5 billion in 2022. Now, profit-taking resumes at the domestic equities market as the NGX benchmark index swings into negative territory. Laddie Williams tells us more.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, we see
Downtrend again, back in the market, 0.08%. We can't call it a trend yet at this point, but we're seeing the all-share index losing that 500 level, but still maintaining 100,000 points. Market cap 56.89 trillion. Let's look at the sectoral performance. We see the banking counter taking a beating today after gaining yesterday 0.67%. Down, then we see consumer goods making out a marginal gain of 0.06%. Oil and gas unchanged. Let's look at the tier 1 banks at this time. We know today was all about the banks. 1.30% drop for UBA. We see GTCO, the lone gainer with the tier 1 banks we track here, 0.11% up, but wasn't enough to counter the loss with Zenith Bank after gaining yesterday. Big 2% drop. 0.52% drop for Access Core. Well, today we had the MPC decision. It was another hike, 50 basis points, and definitely borrowing getting more expensive at this time. We'll see how the market reacts further to this latest rate hike. That's Stock Market Report. I'm Ladi Williams.
And that's business news. It's back to Ayotunde for the rest of the news at 10.
Thank you, Will. Secret Service Director Kimberly Chittle has resigned following security lapses in the run-up to the assassination attempt on former U.S. President Donald Trump. Chittle testified for nearly 6 hours during a contentious House committee hearing on Monday, where she took responsibility for the security lapses and acknowledged that the incident marked the most significant operational failure of the Secret Service in decades. Sami Pusa has more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Vice President Kamala Harris has secured the support of a majority of Democratic delegates to become the party's nominee for president. It means she has received the endorsement of more than the 1,976 delegates needed to win the nomination in the first round of voting.
And it is my intention to go out and earn this nomination and to win.
That means Kamala Harris is on course to be crowned the party's standard bearer and take on Republican Donald Trump in November's presidential election. No one has publicly stepped forward to challenge her since President Joe Biden left the race on Sunday. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, has stripped Hungary of the right to host the next meeting of foreign and defence ministers over its stance on the war in Ukraine. It comes weeks after Hungary assumed the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union, a role in which it would normally host the event, and amid anger over a meeting Prime Minister Viktor Orban held with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Mr. Borrell said Hungary's actions should have consequences. Hungary described the move as completely childish. The next set of meetings will instead take place in Brussels.
I understood that we have to send a signal, even if it is a symbolic signal, that being against the foreign policy of the European Union and disqualifying the policy of the European Union as the party of war has to have some consequences.
Rival Palestinian factions Hamas and Fatah have signed a declaration agreeing to form an interim national reconciliation government for the occupied West Bank and Gaza after the war with Israel. The agreement came after a meeting brokered by China's foreign minister and Hamas officials said. Representatives from the groups, along with 12 other Palestinian factions, pledged to work for unity after 3 days of talks in Beijing. It is the latest of several reconciliation deals Hamas and Fatah have agreed on in their long-fractured relationship. Meanwhile, 7 Palestinians, including 2 militant commanders and a woman, have been killed during Israeli raids targeting gunmen in the occupied West Bank. One Israeli raid took place in the city of Tulkarm, where fighting between Palestinian militants and Israeli soldiers erupted in the streets. In videos shared by the Israeli army, gunmen are seen in an alley before an explosion engulfs them in smoke. The Palestinian Health Ministry said 2 Palestinians were killed in a separate raid near the city of Hebron. The death toll from 2 landslides in southern Ethiopia has risen sharply to over 150. That's according to the head of the National Disaster Response Agency in Gopher Zone, who said the number could increase further. Marcos Melese said the search is ongoing and that there were bodies yet to be recovered. Officials had reported on Monday that 50 people had died. That's after heavy rain overnight caused a first landslide and then a second buried people who had gathered to help. Women, children and local police were reported to be among the dead. Pro- and anti-government protesters have clashed again in Nairobi, Kenya's capital, and have been dispersed by police tear gas. Businesses were closed as police guarded key points, including Parliament. Young people started protesting across the country against a proposed finance bill that would see sharp tax hikes in June this year. The demonstrations have grown into a larger spate of protest action against William Ruto's government. More than 50 people have been killed since the start of the violence in mid-June, leaving the president caught between pressure from lenders to pay down high debts and a public reeling from the high costs of living. And the American rapper Snoop Dogg will be among the torchbearers carrying the Olympic flame in the final stretch before the opening ceremony of the Paris Games on Friday. The 52-year-old will carry the torch through the streets of Saint-Denis, the underprivileged northern Paris suburb that is home to the Stade de France Olympic Stadium. It comes as people in central Paris were given a celestial treat last night when the moon passed through the Olympic rings on the Eiffel Tower. The Paris Olympics will take place from this Friday until August the 11th. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel's studios in Lagos.
Many thanks indeed, Simon. Let's get in more sports stories now, as women's 100 meters hurdles world record holder Tobi Amusa will be Nigeria's flag bearer for the opening ceremony of the Paris Olympic Games this Friday, July 26. The appointment marks a historic moment for Nigerian athletes as Amusa becomes the first track and field athlete to receive this honor after Mary Onyali more than 2 decades ago. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Olympic Committee also announced multiple African badminton champion Anu Oluwapo Okpeyori as the general team captain throughout the games in Paris. And staying with the Summer Games, the Tigers head coach Rena Wakama has unveiled her final 12-player roster, a team which will be led by team captain Amy Okonkwo. 4 players were dropped from the initial 16 that made it to Germany for a training tour. The reigning AfroBasket women's champions are drawn in Group A with host nation France, Australia and Canada. And ahead of the wider Paris region, Valerie Precasi says the Paris metropolitan area will be ready with a smile to welcome visitors coming to see the games. She was speaking while on the media visits to show off the special signage put in place for thousands of visitors expected at the games. And that's your sports news tonight. I'm Kelly Egiga. It's back to you today.
Many thanks, Kelly. And the main news again. 70,000 naira is the new minimum wage for Nigerian workers, as the National Assembly today speedily passed the National Minimum Wage Act 2019 into law. And that's news at 10 tonight. Many thanks for watching. I'm Ayo Tunde Balogun from everyone here. It's good night and please stay safe.